This is my new friend. This is Robert the goose. Yeah. Now, a month ago, well, we wanted geese for a couple of years. We've got a lot of pastures. It's basically transitioning to an agroforestry system. Part of that is trees overstory, but and shrubs and so on. But also, we've always needed something to do with grazing. Now we've had muscovy ducks, which eat a certain amount of grass, and we've had chickens that again eat a little bit of grass, but mostly they're there for the scratching function. But we've been after geese for a couple of years, but getting geese started is a difficult enterprise because they don't do very well in an incubator generally. Hen chicks do really well. They really reliable in an incubator, and muscovies not so much. Geese have the reputation of being very difficult. So I didn't want to just buy really expensive goose eggs and then put them in an incubator and have them fail, because it's a waste of perfectly good eggs. But also, it's a huge expense, and we want to avoid that. So we managed to find someone relatively near who has a couple of varieties of goose and was willing to give us some eggs at a really good price. So, given that we have muscovies, and muscovies are really broody, all summer long, they're just desperate to hatch eggs. We waited until they were broody, and then we came back with the batch of eggs, and we put, I think, 8 underneath the broody muscovy, which is Sylvia, and then we put the remaining 5 into the incubator on the basis that it's better than just just committing to them not having working and eating them as food. So so we found that, and now I did a little bit of research online as much as I couldn't find a great deal of information. I found 1 or 2 things that actually said yes, it was possible to bring them on under a muscovy, but most information seemed to be mostly just suggesting an incubator, and I really didn't want to put them in the incubator any more than necessary. So we put a load under Sylvia and we put the rest into the incubator. Now halfway through, now they're meant to take between 28 and 35 days depending on the size of the breed. The bigger breeds like the Emden and Toulouse, that are the 2 breeds that this lot came from, they're meant to take the longer, up to 35 days. But someone didn't tell this dude, because he came out of the incubator yesterday at 27 days. So he must have been sat on a couple of days before we got hold of the eggs. But interestingly, of all the ones in the incubator, hello, after my beard again. Of all the ones in the incubator, oh, it's the mic. Okay. Of all the ones in the incubator, they're still in there. After about 20 days, 19, 20 days, I went in to check on Sylvia in the morning, and she'd actually ejected one of the eggs from the nest. So thought it might be something wrong with it. There's often a reason why these things happen, but she knows far more about hatching eggs than I ever will. But to be on the safe side, I brought it in and put it into the incubator, and that is what has ended up as Robert here. Now we've got another 3 eggs of the remain. Oh, and one of the ones in the incubator, it started smelling really bad, started smelling rotten, so we just disposed of that immediately. But of the others that are remaining in the incubator, 3 of them are rocking. We're getting movement out of them. They're fairly difficult to candle because the shells are so thick. Even with a proper candling device, it's just not really happening. So they're still rocking and doing their thing. So when Robert here hatched, I thought, okay, so at the point that he was brought in, he was still completely viable from being underneath Sylvia, so that was encouraging. It gave me hope for them. 3 or 4 days ago, we're getting close towards the end of the experiment, I went out. There's 2 levels in the duck house, and the ducks have got access in and out all day long. Now the bottom section is where they're fed and they're watered, and they go upstairs to a ramp. Muscovies like going upstairs to bed. They go up a ramp, across a little landing, and go into the bedroom at night. Whoa, hang on, here we go. Alright. And a few days ago I noticed that something, probably a crow, had got in downstairs and had eaten a duck egg that had been laid there. That concerned me, because obviously we've got you know, a broody upstairs, and you know the phrase a sitting duck for something that's particularly helpless absolutely applies with ducks. It's, you know, it's absolutely true. You know, they're very vulnerable, especially sitting on eggs. So yeah, so I became concerned about that, so I've been keeping an eye on it. I've been making sure that the crows aren't getting around too much, but I have seen them around the duck hut. So hang on, I'm gonna move you a little bit. There we go. Am I sitting forward a bit? There we go. So I was concerned. So after he hatched last night, you coming up? All right. So after he hatched last night, I went out this morning just to check everything was okay. I do like that cable. And I opened up the big section to go into the top where Sylvia is, and there was the remains of an egg. It was one of the more viable ones, I could tell, because there was I could see exposed blood vessels inside the shell. I was gutted. You know, crows got in, and we've lost I don't know how many. I went into the section downstairs and found another remains of a shell. Again, really unhappy. So I thought, all right, let's see how bad it is. So, and bear in mind that we've got a fairly narrow window between ducks becoming broody and geese stopping lay for the year. There's only a couple of weeks in there, so we couldn't get more eggs at this point and start again. And I was feeling pretty demotivated anyway, so I was pulling my arm here. So, went upstairs, opened it up, lifted Sylvia off to see how bad the damage was. Not crows at all, Sylvia. There's two perfectly little goslings just looking back at me. One very dark, one very blonde, so it's probably one Emden and one Toulouse. So at this point we know absolutely that the most reliable technique that we had available to us for bringing the goslings out, for getting them hatched, was under a broody muscovy. Muscovy is absolutely determined when it's sitting on eggs. They're incredibly good mothers. You know, some breeds like quail, you know, you need an incubator, because quail, the domestic varieties, they're barely able to function really. You know, they make terrible mothers, and they're virtually impossible to get eggs out of them to hatch. Whereas muscovy are, you know, completely the opposite on that spectrum. They're incredibly good. Everything I'd read, I said there's limited information on producing, getting goose eggs to hatch under a broody muscovy, but what I did read suggested that because goose eggs are significantly bigger than a muscovy egg, that the turning of the eggs routinely through the day isn't something that they can manage on their own. So I was going out in the morning and in the evening, lifting Sylvia off, which Sylvia didn't like, moving the down aside, rotating each egg 180 degrees individually, putting the down back on, letting Sylvia back on. I found it stressful, she found it stressful, but was absolutely necessary. I found after a couple of weeks, I noticed that the position I turned them to, they weren't like that when I went back in the evening. So I suspected that she was doing a pretty respectable job of rotating it. As I said, that hello, there's nothing as, that's the microphone. There's nothing quite as determined as a broody muscovy, so she was managing it somehow. So I went to rotating them once a day, and in the last 2 days I stopped entirely because sometimes the goslings will want to get into the right position for laying, for hatching rather, and you know, you don't want to be second guessing them by rotating them. So yeah, so far we've got little Robert here, which again, Sylvia did half the job. And then we've got another two who are currently sitting under Sylvia. And we've got another few eggs under there, and we'll see how they go. But I should have been filming this all along. And of course I could have filmed it now and pretended that we've just got these eggs, we'll see how they do. No, I'm going to show it exactly as it is. Now the only difficulty we've had is, let me show you. And I'll turn you over, here we go. See his legs, we've got a bit of tape in there. That's a hobble, because when he was first hatched, his legs were splayed outwards, which can mean a vitamin deficiency. Won't have been in this case. I mean, the breeder they came from, superb. You know, there's no question whatsoever about the way she looks after her animals. You know, she's a vegetarian who just really loves geese. So yeah, she's, you know, they're really, really well looked after. So it was, you know, perfect situation to get the eggs we're starting our flock from. That really pinches. So It definitely wasn't that, so it's just that when it hatched inside the incubator, it's a little bit slippery and its legs had splayed. It hatched late last night, it spent all night in the incubator, and we have to do this with quail fairly routinely. And quail, very difficult to keep alive, really. Whereas this dude here, he's tough as, yeah. So it's literally just a little bit of paper tape, nothing permanent, nothing harmful, and that'll stay on just for a day until tomorrow. He's really strong on his legs already, and it just supports his legs from splitting sideways, holds them together until the muscles strengthen just for lifting him up. I could probably take it off now and it'll be absolutely fine. He's actually walking around really easily with the hobble. That happens within a couple of hours, and it doesn't really matter when they're this little because they're good for a couple of days. Seriously, what are you doing? Good for a couple of days for food and drink, because they've still got the yolk that they just absorbed. So it's not a problem with him. But that is how we say hello. It's the first goose hatched on the croft. It's the beginning of our flock. So we're pretty sure it's a male. I'm pretty sure it's a gander from the size of him, because the ones that are under Sylvia are a lot smaller, even though the eggs were fairly similar sized. So yeah, this is Robert the goose, and we'll see what the others are. And they're all going to get names because these aren't going to end up as food. This is just for bringing the pastures back into condition, so they can live up to 25 years. And if he's a cross between the two, which is likely between Emden and Toulouse, then you get a certain amount of hybrid vigour. So you get really big, strong, really healthy animals. Ultimately, we want to have a mostly Toulouse flock because they're quieter. We don't want, we couldn't have 20, 30 Emden on site. It would be deafening every morning. It would be funny, but it would be deafening every morning. So, yeah. So that's this little dude here, and I'm going to pop him in, and we'll go and have a look at what Sylvia's done. So, that's Sylvia. Come on then. Good girl, I know. Been really good. Good girl. Come on. Off we come. Look what you made. Look. The camera. Oops. Look at them. Look what you did. Good girl. By the end of hatch, we've got 3 little geese. So, this little one here is Lucy. That's Goldie. And that one eating, that's Robert, which you've already met. Now, Lucy and Goldie were under Sylvia. Robert, of course, came out of the incubator, but Sylvia had already half baked that egg for us. So, yeah, the conclusion I've reached is that they're going to go through that box fairly soon. The conclusion I've reached is that a muscovy is far, far more reliable than the incubator, at least for us. None of the ones in the incubator came. We didn't get a single hatch other than Robert, who, as we know, was under Sylvia for just over half the time. So yeah, I'm very, very pleased with the result there. It's something we'll definitely do again. I mean, the best option is still to hatch eggs under an actual goose. She's going to be far, far better at it than anyone else. But seeing as we didn't actually have a goose at the time, that's, trying to get established with a new variety of anything is really difficult. So this is a really nice result, because yeah, we had the muscovies. They're amazing mothers, and yeah, she did not care. She was perfectly happy to hatch these eggs, so yeah, I'm going to consider that a success.